Welcome to The Author Show, where we present new authors and books. From fiction to self-help and everything in between, you'll find it all here. To watch the TV version of our program, visit authorswebtv.com. That's authorswebtv.com. And now, let the show begin with your hosts, Don McCauley and Danielle Hampson.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming the program author Maria Daddino, and she is the author of Maria's DuckTales, Wildlife Stories from My Garden. Maria is a mother, grandmother. She's passionate about native gardens, birds, wildlife, and collies. She's an award-winning author and columnist. She writes a weekly community column from Fourth Neck for the Western edition of the Southampton Press. Her essays have appeared in the press box in both the Eastern and Western editions of the Southampton Press, as well as the Press of Manorville and Mooriches. Her wildlife stories have also appeared in the South Shore Monthly, the Great South Bay Magazine, and in The Eyes of the Wild, an anthology of wildlife poetry and short stories. Maria, how are you?
I'm fine and delighted to be on your show.
Well, let's start with a big question. Tell us about this book, please.
It's a charming and endearing collection of wildlife stories from a memorable time in my life. I was able to have a relationship with wild animals and still keep them free.
So who did you write this book for specifically?
For nature lovers, wildlife lovers. Actually, it started out not as a book. I was a sole caregiver for 4 loved ones, and writing was my stress relief. When I could finally start my own life, I put the stories together and published a book. I come across so many people who, when wildlife comes into their garden, they want to trap it, kill it, get rid of it. So this book hopefully will show these people that animals have feelings and souls.
So is there any type of central message or perhaps underlying theme that runs throughout the book?
Yes, it's that people and wildlife can coexist in a beautiful garden as nature intended. And I'd like the readers to see that animals have feelings and souls and respect them and appreciate them.
If you could compare this book with any book out there that we might already be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
It would be All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot, and it is the same theme. It's short, independent little stories about animals who have enriched our lives.
The book has won a lot of awards. Tell us about them.
Oh, well, when I first wrote the book, my family and friends told me it was wonderful, and I didn't believe them. So I entered it in some contests to see if the book was any good, and the first contest I entered, I won, and that was in Los Angeles, and then I won 12 more awards. My book has won awards in diverse genres, of course in animals, but also in environment, nature, humor, and memoirs. I'm going to accept the silver medal in the animal category at the Reader's Favorite Awards in Miami. I received an award from the Indie Reader Discovery Awards at the Javits Center, and I won the National Indie Excellence Award in Nature.
Now, you mentioned in your introduction that your wildlife garden is your passion, so tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, it's a marvelous garden. It's magical. It's planted with native flowers. I have all sorts of wildlife, turkeys, pheasants, deer, and we all coexist peacefully and happily. I live on a magical part of Long Island, the East End. We're on the flyway, so during migration season, I have magnificent birds that come here. It's just a wonderful garden. It flourishes. It's chemically free. I use no chemicals. It's lush and full and surprising because plants appear where I don't plant them, and it's just a wonderful garden.
What does it mean to have a garden certified as a wildlife habitat by the National Wildlife Federation?
You must have 4 basic elements in the garden. Natural food for the wildlife, berries or clover for the bunnies. You have to have water, shelter shrubs and trees to shelter them in all sorts of weather, and a safe environment for wildlife to raise their young. You would go to the National Wildlife Federation's website and fill out an application. You would list your plants and send pictures, and then if they accept you, you get a nice plaque, and it's wonderful for the environment.
Now, you grew up in Brooklyn without any pets or flowers. With a childhood like that, how did you become such a passionate wildlife advocate?
I grew up in the 1940s in East New York, Brooklyn, which was a very poor neighborhood. It was all cement. And most of the people I knew did not read for pleasure. They read only because they had to. So I'd sneak to the public library, and I would read to my heart's content these wonderful books about gardens and animals. And I think that formed the seed. But really, there was something inside my soul that just couldn't be denied. And I just loved nature, and I don't know where it came from because nobody else in my family was like that.
Would you say you have any favorite characters in the book?
Yes, I have two ducks. They were twin ducks, Peanut and Patches, and I watched them hatch from the same egg. Peanut was the brains. She ended up being the leader of the ducks. Her babies always followed her orders. I wish that my sons listened to me the way her ducklings listened to her. And her sister evidently inherited the beauty. She was the Scarlet O'Hara, the diva duck, and they got into all sorts of mischief. They were my favorite characters.
You describe a special visit from a pair of juvenile ospreys. What made that visit so special?
In the 1950s and 1960s, the osprey population declined rapidly because of DDT. Ospreys were listed as endangered, but because of the ban on DDT, they made a remarkable comeback. So it was such a privilege to me to watch birds that were a conservation success story fly right over my garden. They were up close and personal, so it was thrilling.
Most people are afraid of swans, especially when they're raising their young. Were you afraid of swans?
Well, at first I was terrified. They're awesome, and when they're angry, they're particularly frightening. They have a huge wingspan and can be quite aggressive. But as they trusted me, we began to have a wonderful relationship. I was always careful and respectful of them and their signettes. But over time, they began to trust me. I think they understood I'd never hurt them. So they allowed me to do things like help a signette when it was in trouble, when it had fishing line wrapped around it. I was able to net the signette, take off the fishing line, and put the baby back in the water. And the parents, amazingly, didn't do anything, but the signette hissed horribly at me the whole summer.
Now, you raised 2 orphan baby squirrels and kept them in your basement throughout the winter because they couldn't be released until spring. Did you want to make them pets, and how hard was it to release them into the wild?
Yeah, of course, my instinct was to cuddle them and make them pets, but I feel very strongly that wild animals are meant to be just that, wild and free. And I always wanted what was best for my wildlife, not me. So there was really no choice. I had to force myself not to make pets of them. Releasing them was emotionally hard because I kept second-guessing myself, wondering about their survival skills, which I couldn't give them in the wild because I wasn't a squirrel mom. But they did remarkably well. Their instincts kicked in, and they lived long and happy lives.
Now, Peanut was your favorite duck. How did you cope with losing her?
With a lot of tears. But I learned that when you love wildlife and you want them to be wild and free, you just cry a lot.
Who is Robert J.?
Robert J. was a very bad little duck, And he was named after my middle son, who was my mischievous one. Robert J. never listened to his mom, which was very unusual for a duck. He was also a mixture of ducks. He was black and white, and he had blue eyes. He disappeared every summer, and I'd think that I lost him, and I'd feel very sad. And then he'd come back every fall, and the female ducks would all jump on him and beat him up, and they never did that to anybody else. So one summer, I just went all over to find him, and I finally did, and I found him at the local bar called Hogan's Goat, and he'd spend the summer there. They had an outdoor patio, and he'd walk around, and they'd give him burgers and fries, and he was very happy.
All right, what about those Pekin ducks? How could you still love them after they devoured vegetable garden after vegetable garden?
I guess I'd have to say that I love the ducks more than my garden. I didn't think that was possible, but it was. It became a game, a challenge for me to outwit them, because I kept reminding myself that I was smarter, but even though they always won. But I think I just like coexisting with wildlife, and if they enjoy some of my vegetables or strawberries, I'm okay with that.
Now, most authors have a specific reason for writing a specific book. What was your reason for writing this book?
It didn't start out as a book. I was a caregiver for 4 loved ones, a sole caregiver, and it was an amazing amount of stress, and writing was my stress relief. My son gave me Front Page to make websites in 2000, and in 2000, no one had a personal website, so Yahoo picked up on it, and pretty soon my website was all over the world, and I was getting emails from people, and they were saying, please, please, put your stories in a book. We'd love to give them to friends, because not everybody had computers in those days. So that's really how my book came about.
In your opinion, who should buy this book?
Well, of course, I think everyone, but nature lovers and animal lovers and people who are planning to start wildlife gardens.
Well, time is getting very short, so the most important question, where can we buy this book?
Okay, it's available online at all the online retailers, but there are many prices of my book out there, and it's all the same book. So I did set up a website, my own website, and I do give free shipping. My books are signed. They come with a butterfly bookmark, and they're wrapped in a pretty bow. And on my website, there's also a link to Smashwords, which has the best price for the ebook. And you can use PayPal or any regular credit card.
This has been just great. Our guest today has been Maria Daddino, and she is the author of Maria's DuckTales, Wildlife Stories from My Garden. Maria, thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such fun.
This is Don McCauley, wrapping up another edition of The Author Show. If you're an author or know an author, learn how you can help a publisher publish you by visiting helpapublisherpublishyou.com. Each week you receive a listing of publishers, small presses, and others who may be interested in publishing your work. This is a free service of The Author Show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit www.theauthorshow.com, fill out the form, and we may be contacting you shortly. And if you're an author, don't forget to visit Book Marketing, the Author's Marketing Powerhouse, at www.theauthorsmarketingpowerhouse.com. We look forward to seeing you here next time on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. To contact us, call toll-free 1-877-955-8800. That's 877-955-8800. Or visit theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.